Inside PressBox is presented by Live Casino and Hotel. Always live, always on.
And a very pleasant good morning and welcome into another edition of Inside PressBox. Gary Stein with you. Stan the Fan has Mother's Day off. Hope yours is off to a great start as well. Later in the show, we'll play a little multiple choice with PressBox Ravens beat writer Bo Smolka. And Bill Ordine will check in. He had a chance to sit down with Rob Norton, the president of Cordish Global Gaming, to talk about a new addition to Live Casino and Hotel that cigar smokers will surely love. But first, a sad note in Baltimore sports. Legendary lacrosse coach and U.S. Lacrosse Hall of Famer Dick Edell, who took 3 collegiate programs to 20 NCAA tournaments and a brilliant 29-year coaching career, passed away last week at the age of 74. But perhaps the Dundalk native's greatest achievement was winning an NCAA title coaching a sport he never played. Here to talk about it and to remember Dick Edell's greatness is one of his former players, UMBC head soccer coach Pete Caringi, joining us here on Inside PressBox. And Pete, good to see you. Not in the greatest of circumstances, of course, but always good to see you. And let's talk about it. I think all sports fans know who Dick Edell is or was, but not a lot of people know that he won an NCAA championship as a soccer coach. And you were one of his players.
Yeah, one of the great stories, probably one of the great unknown stories, is how well he did as a soccer coach. He's a legendary lacrosse coach, legendary figure, bigger than life, and had such an impact on a lot of people, a lot of players throughout the Maryland area. But he was a soccer coach. You know, he got a job opportunity to coach University of Baltimore lacrosse back in 1972, and along with it, they offered him the soccer job. He knew nothing about soccer, but went down to East Baltimore and did a great job of recruiting. He knew how to recruit. And that year he brought in 5 Baltimore All-Metro players, Baltimore Sun All-Metro players. And that year they went to the Final Four. And the University of Baltimore, Loyola, back then it was a big rivalry. Soccer, college soccer was big in this town. And he kind of invigorated the program. And going to the Final Four that year kind of set it off. For University of Baltimore.
And your relationship with him actually began before college. You were at Calvert Hall playing soccer. He was at Calvert Hall coaching lacrosse, not soccer. And so tell me from a student's perspective what your vision or how you view Dick Edell.
It's funny because my view of Dick Edell obviously changed so much, but as a high school freshman at Calvert Hall, I went there to play soccer. I was a soccer player, and he was, he coached JV football, and he was the head lacrosse coach, and he was this physical, imposing person, and he was my gym teacher, and I got along with him as a gym, and he was my gym teacher, but I never ever dreamt or thought that he would ever get involved with soccer. I mean, his lacrosse was his sport, and he had an impact on us as a teacher back then, but I've always was intimidated by him. To be honest with you. And when I found out that he got the job my senior year at Calvert Hall, that he was going to coach University of Baltimore soccer, I knew a lot of my friends were going there, but I really kind of, to be honest with you, thought it was a joke. And I think he probably, he was up for the challenge, but that's one of the more one of the hardest things to do is get involved with what he did.
Well, and especially in this town back then because soccer was so big, a Highland town area. So what do you think the characteristic was that he had that enabled him to win a national championship in a sport that he really knew nothing about?
Clearly, he's the definition of a coach. This is something I do for a living. I've been doing it my whole life. But clearly, Coach Edell was the kind of guy who could walk into any locker room in any sport and take command of the room. He demanded respect. You gave him respect. He never came across as acting like he knew the sport. Even after winning a national championship, he didn't come across as a know-it-all. But he was always very humbled, but very intense, wanted to win. All the characteristics that he had, it was a perfect marriage. It was a really good, great group of guys, soccer players with a really great coach who could just, for me, he could coach any sport. He could go in the locker room and be successful.
Pete, over time, and I know you know this, he was a physical, strapping man, but over time his body gave out on him, and while his mind was still sharp, his body just started to deteriorate. When was the last time you actually had a chance to spend time with him?
I spent time with him actually the last game, Don Zimmerman's last game. Albany played because the head coach at Albany lacrosse is also his assistant. So he came over to UMBC to watch the game, and I spent time with him and had a lot of conversations with him. He would always call me, especially before big games, or I would call him if I just to see how he was doing, or two, just any kind of advice. I mean, he was that kind of special person. So we've always had phone contact, but the last time I've actually physically seen him was that day. And then we had a reunion, the University of Baltimore team, that he did show up, and we had a chance to actually spend the night with him, all the guys, 4 or 5 hours, where we just talked about the old days and had food, and it was just the team only, and it was really a special night.
And that was the 40th reunion back in 2015.
45th
reunion. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Pete, always good to see you. Again, not in the greatest circumstances, but thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate you letting me come over and talk about him.
Absolutely. Dick Edell passing away at the age of 74, one of the greats in lacrosse history, and you heard it, won a national championship as a soccer coach. Up next, we'll talk Ravens football post-draft 2018. A little multiple choice, anyone? Bo Smolko is next as Inside PressBox continues on ABC2. Hopkins lacrosse beat Maryland to win the Big Ten tournament. Today, the Blue Jays will host Georgetown in the first round of the NCAA tournament at 5 p.m. at Homewood Field. Come out and watch. For ticket information, go to hopkinslacrosse.universitytickets.com. And Royal Farms' world-famous chicken has been ranked #1 in Food and Wine magazine. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast.
Inside PressBox is presented by Live Casino and Hotel. Always live, always on.